Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast here. This is the Edge Report. It's Chris Moeller. I've got an awesome guest in Dave Cairns today. Dave and I were introduced on LinkedIn about 3.5 years ago. Sort of enjoying each other's content as there was a shifting tide in the commercial real estate industry, and have since become close friends. And Dave and I are just taking an hour today to talk and to riff and record and share it with the world. So Dave, thanks for your hour, brother.
Yeah, man, it's so funny. Just how you introduced that is powerful. We were introduced on LinkedIn. LinkedIn introduced us. That is a really weird concept when you think about it, because it
Yeah.
it did. But what also introduced us actually is the pandemic. Um, Phil Kirshner, who I was just with at Workspaces last week, brought up this funny point where he was just like, 99% of the people in the world of the workplace were like, oh my God, get me the hell out of this. Like, I hope we can just like return to the way it was real fast. But then like 1% of the nerds or the groundhogs just came up for air and we're like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah. I
and
love that
that's,
image.
yeah, and that's how we met, right? Like we were both self-loathing in our space in the industry,
Yeah.
and we were talking about it. And I think that's literally the coolest thing that happened because of the pandemic, that we had like a pause and a platform to connect.
Yes. Love that. And that's exactly what we did, because there was so much conversation and like hoopla around whether or not it could be done. And the whole
hmm
time you and I were like, we're doing it right now.
hmm
Like,
hmm
how are you not seeing this? We're all connected and we're having conversations, whether you agree with them or not, it's fine. But like, we're on a platform, distributed, connecting. And
hmm
people were saying it couldn't be done, like at the same
Yeah.
time.
Well, and the amazing thing that actually happened is so many in-person connections got created as a result of being able to access all these people that were distributed. Like you flew to my new hometown. Like life changed so much. It's so crazy. When I met you, we were talking to each other while I was in a co-working space working near my house in the pandemic. We actually signed that lease, my wife and I, months before the pandemic started, thinking that it would be an office for her business. And then it took on a completely different reason for existing because of the pandemic. But I was talking to you there. And then within about a year of that, I left the city I grew up in, moved to an island where, some people like to consider it Nowheresville, but those people don't actually know where I live or know anything about anything. But I picked up and moved across the country. And then we met in person for the first time, you flying here, actually on the way to Purposeful Intent, the sweatshirt you're wearing right now.
Yeah.
And you came and spent a few days with us, and then we drove through Bangor, Maine, spent some time with your nephew, interviewed him about the future of work, went down to a conference together. I've actually then since like met potential customers that were at that event that I had no customer ability to even make them a customer at the time, but I do now in my new role. Like
Right.
you roll that snowball down the
Yeah. Yeah.
hill, right? And
All
it,
friends, by the way, now for me, like everyone you just mentioned in that whole world is family or friends.
yeah. And it's like, we're talking about how like being like on the internet is bad. I mean, like in a sense, it is bad. There's a dark side to it, but there's just been so many bright spots in the whole LinkedIn world as a result of COVID, and so many in-person connections made because of COVID and the internet.
Yeah, it's like the professional, like adult version of Roblox, right? Like
Mm.
you and I have talked a lot about, like, my kids are 15 and 17, right? So I have the benefit of having sort of seen how kids grow up digitally native, right?
hmm
And Minecraft was what taught me so much about the future of work, because I was watching the kids are playing, but they're not. They're programming, and they're
hmm
working and they're collaborating in a world that's a server, and the kids are all distributed. But then the machines, the bots, the programs that they build work all night while they're sleeping, and they go back to this world and there's more production that's been done. right? And I shared that with you
So
too.
they're like contribute. In other words, like people are online while other people aren't building and changing the world that they're playing in. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's both
Yeah.
synchronous and asynchronous, right? So like the other kids, if they weren't like if you and I were building a world together and you weren't on, you were still building, right? If I
Yeah.
programmed something that was an automation or a bot to like create something and I wasn't there,
Oh, I see.
it's
Yeah.
still working.
Yeah. I
So
see.
like
That's
the
cool. Yeah.
amount of potential input that happens 24/7 365 in the future of work, distributed teams 24/7 365
Mm-hmm.
human input,
Mm-hmm.
but then automation that does things 24 365, like people can't even wrap their heads around what we can
Mm-hmm.
do for productivity. And
Mm-hmm.
yet there's so many people that are saying you have to be here from this time to this time to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
not what we get together for anymore. We get together for, thank you, Simon, with purposeful intent. We get
Mm-hmm.
together to codify the relationship or confirm or solidify or grow or fertilize that relationship. Like that's why we
Mm-hmm.
get together.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think the thing I also heard from you as you're sharing is like, this is why I love Gen X, is because you are raising the children that were born into the high speed version of the internet. And you see like all the things that are incredible about their perspective because of being born in that world. And then you also see the struggles from a very firsthand perspective. Like there's just nothing more powerful than being a parent, as we both know. Sorry, you're going to jump in. Go ahead.
No, just I want to share. I want to share a personal story because it's right here on top of mind.
Yeah.
My son's 17. He's a senior. He just came home this past
Mm-hmm.
weekend from Connecticut. He's got a girlfriend here.
Mm.
I was relatively unaware. We were relatively unaware that he had a girlfriend in the first place. Um, but they're not
That's pretty
800 miles,
standard.
800 miles, right? 800 miles apart, right? He's in
Yeah.
Connecticut. She lives in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
She was having homecoming. She asked him to come home. Anyway, fast forward.
Mm-hmm.
He really likes her, like
Mm-hmm.
really likes her, and she
Mm-hmm.
really likes him. They're a cute couple.
Mm-hmm.
And he professed his affection for her publicly on
Online.
Instagram.
Mm.
He posted his relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, like it that doesn't seem like a big deal, but like his most inner feelings about another human being that he's connected with,
Mm-hmm.
he's professing to a platform on Instagram and then
Mm-hmm.
getting the vulnerability of the responses. And some of his boys are ripping him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, my daughter got online and she had a great comment. Like, it's public now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know. I just wanted to share that
Well,
because
no, man, I love that you shared it, and I think it's relevant to one of the key things we said we wanted to talk about today. Like, I guess, like people would say the dark side of that is that, and I'm not even what I'm about to say has no bearing on your son. Just to be clear, I don't even know your son personally, but people would say the dark side of that is that we're becoming increasingly more narcissistic. And Rex Miller was actually talking about that on stage at Workspaces last week too. That like since the 70s, I guess they've tracked like university students. They see we're becoming more self-involved, just inherently more self-involved. Um, and I think like the other knock on the more digital world would be like our social muscles are atrophying, so to speak, like our ability to know how to really connect and have conflict or friction or depth in person, that we're saying it's going away. And I think maybe like some of that's quite true, but the other side of it is this incredible opportunity to be able to be open, vulnerable, and share and connect and tell stories about our lives with people that otherwise wouldn't have the ability to connect into them, be they random people that find meaning in our stories in our lives, or people in our lives that we don't have the chance to be close to physically. And now we have this amazing opportunity to be able to share with each other. So like everything, it's always everything, right?
yeah,
Um,
it's complicated.
but like what I've been noticing on LinkedIn is people are starting to get up in arms about sharing anything that is personal on the platform,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think the people that have a problem with this, I think they default to this assumption that the people that are sharing the stuff are just like going all in on our narcissistic tendencies.
Mm.
And I don't think that's true. I mean, like, I think like we all seek validation. We all seek like, acceptance, being acknowledged, being patted on the back. And of course, like looking for that next notification on your phone that you hope is positive rather than negative isn't necessarily healthy. I'm not going to say that it is. But I think the majority of people that are putting out stuff are trying to connect with other people through doing that.
Yep.
And like I can only speak for myself because I look at it more like truly as a creator. Like I look at it at putting out my story in words, be they written or how we're doing it right now, to be a form of creative expression. And it's just like an ever evolving thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And how I evolve as a creative person is that I put something out and then I get responses back from the world, and the world tells me how they feel about it.
Feedback.
And it informs what I say next, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I had I want to round this thought out because like I made a video about it yesterday that you felt like we should talk about more, and I'll just try to summarize it really quickly. Like a few days ago, I was walking down the street with my wife. We sometimes just go house watching in the in the neighborhood that in our town that like we hope one day maybe we'll buy something. And it's right downtown. You've been there. It's like just like right of where like we were at Receiver Coffee Shop on like Vic Row, that cool like
I knew exactly where you were yesterday
pedestrian
when
street.
you were posting, and I
Yeah,
was there with you.
yeah. So like that area, we see this amazing like brick, beautiful old home. They don't make homes like this anymore, right? They just don't exist. And my wife just points out to me, she goes, "Oh, that was a barber shop like hundreds of years ago." Yeah, like a barber built that and then occupied it as his residence and his place of work. And I went like, wow, first of all, no barber in today's economic environment could build a structure that is of that quality and integrity and then run a business out of it. The world has changed so fundamentally in that regard that financially stuff like that just doesn't pencil anymore, which is unfortunate, but it's a reality. But if we put that over here for a second, that's, I think, an example of how we used to live and work,
Mm-hmm.
which was far more communal. And it's only been very recently that we've severed these two things. And I think that's sort of the issue, is that people's brains are all crossed, the ones that don't want to adapt to what's happened since COVID, right? Because I just think we're seeking a new version of that work-life integration.
Mm-hmm.
And remote and distributed working are the mechanism actually to create a new version of that,
Mm-hmm.
where there's probably a million permutations that we could cite that either exist today or could exist tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
where we can kind of get back to that in a way through technology kind of helping us do it.
Yeah, I
That's
love
how
that,
I
Dave.
see it. That's how I see it.
And look, through my exploration now of like regenerative processes and circular processes, and my work at the Retreat at Firefly Farm, which is data informing, I'm watching people shift their entire lifestyle and occupation to a more resilient version, right? Like, because society told them to go get a degree, and then it told them to go get another degree. And then they got saddled with education debt, and then they bought a house, and then they bought a car, and then they had a kid. And then they realized that they had to make a shit ton of money to support all of that. And then
Yeah.
COVID happened. And they're like, "Oh, I'm not going to be defined by my occupation anymore. I'm selling all this shit. Like, I don't want any of this. I'm moving to the woods. I'm creating a more resilient family life." Because resilient communities are communities that can support a barber, and a barber
Mm-hmm.
can support the community by providing space and cutting hair all at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, because it's more circular economy and it's not as linear.
Well, yeah, and that's like, so yesterday, what I found, I'm an atypical person. I work remote first. Um, what I found in my new role is that I'm traveling somewhere in the world to a big city like once a month, sometimes even more than once a month. Um, but while I'm not, I'm living in my local community, and I work across a number of different locations, but I'm remote to my colleagues, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what's been really cool about having both location and time flexibility, because you actually need both. You can't just have location flexibility. You need to be able to define your day differently, depending
Mm-hmm.
on the needs of that day, whatever they are. And again, I should even stop here and just say it's like massively privileged, at least right now, for people to be able to work this way. I possess an amount of privilege that most people don't have, and that's not lost. But I think it's really important to share the benefits of it, so that hopefully one day it can be more of a democratized opportunity, because I think more people could be given it today. It's actually just that culturally within organizations, we haven't figured out how to do that. People don't want to do it. But anyway,
Mm.
I'm walking down the road yesterday after recording a video, and I see this guy who works in a local coffee shop. His name's Daniel. And we see each other often, and we will either wave and say, as we pass by, talk about the weather as people do, or sometimes we'll just stop in the middle of the road and talk. Right. That's one example. I'm friends with the guy who owns the pet shop that I think you've been into as well.
Yeah.
And like, I remember coming out of an appointment one day and he honks his car at me and he goes, "Hey buddy, small town living," cause like, it's just like the chances of me running into the people that I know are very high.
Yeah.
And then the thing that's also really cool is this like socioeconomic divide is melted away, where like most of my friends are essential and frontline working people,
Mm-hmm.
who, by the way, think remote and flexible working is awesome.
Yeah.
Like we love to talk about how the like folks in that space are being, relegated over here to something that like, a bunch of privileged laptop people have the chance to do that they don't. I've talked to more of them face to face than the average person has, and they think it's great.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I'm right there with you.
yeah. So it's like, that is an incredible opportunity for, white collar workers to be able to interact in their local worlds in a way that has historically not been possible. And
Yes.
I'm walking my daughter down the road to her school. I'm waving and talking to Jim, the crosswalk guy. Like, I
Yeah.
know all of her teachers that I walk by. And last thing I'm going to say on this is, like, a few weeks ago, I asked my daughter, I said, like, hey, she's been in Paris and Amsterdam recently. She's seen some bigger cities. She sees all the tall buildings and things like that, even though actually those two particular cities don't have as many tall buildings. But she understands this notion of an office, what it is, like an office building. And I say to her, how far would you go to go to the office? And she's without even blinking, she's like, I don't know, like 10 minutes. And like, at first you could say like, oh, it's not the office, it's the commute. And it's like, but no, the deeper layer to that is that she lives the way we used to live, where she lives in that communal, like 150 person thing.
Yeah.
Where like her world is this small town,
I do.
And I'm not going to be naive and say that we can or should unwind like a global economy. First of all, it's just not going to happen. But I also don't necessarily think it needs to happen either.
No.
But it's important for us to recognize that our brains are not really wired very well to be like severing ourselves, work and life, living like a fully commuting driven like life. We're not meant to sit anywhere from 9 to 5 all day, whether it's remote in our homes or in an office. We're not physically meant to do that.
No.
Who's that guy from the show Succession? The actor that plays the old man.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
He did that. He did this video that was awesome, where he was just like, "Get up from behind your desk, like move, get out into the world, get outside."
The way I end my video
Yeah, just
content
get
is
into
like,
nature.
hope you
Yeah.
get outside today. Like, get outside.
Exactly. So it's like, this is what the opportunity of like flexible working is. It's like, it's about all of that stuff, like all of it to varying degrees. Right. And I'm just kind of like living it a little bit more on the one end of the spectrum than what's possible or desirable for all people. And I think that's kind of the point too, right? Is that we can set it up in a multitude of ways for people.
Yeah.
And that's the opportunity.
It is. And what I'm seeing, I've been doing crazy research. There's this new stuff that I'm looking at. It's called H3. The concept is that there's 3 horizons. And it's a beautiful methodology, right? There's sort of like, if you think about the coast rising to the mid plains, rising to the mountains, right? There's 3 horizons. And the linear systems and the legacy systems that we've inherited as Gen X. I mean, we remember the 50s. We remember our grandparents from that worked through the 50s. We remember, a world way before this.
Yeah.
And things have progressively, as they've gotten more difficult in so many ways, they've gotten so much more simple. We're so much more enabled now than we were back then. But at the same time, like we still respect that legacy, right? So the legacy systems that we've inherited are in decline. That's the first horizon. The second horizon is that our technology follows a curve. And that technology always sort of has that hype cycle, right? And that's always in place. And then the third is that there's a curve that's going up long term, future. And that third horizon is sort of the farthest away. It's the one that makes us feel the smallest, but it gives us the longest term perspective. And that's looking out at the mountains, right? And you know me, I'm a nature guy. I look to my inspiration in natural systems. So that three horizons concept to me grounds me every day, because I can look at something and be like, oh, legacy, linear thinker, no problem. That's that graph. That's not me, but I recognize it. So it gives me perspective. Then I look at the next one and I'm like, oh, technology, total hype cycle. Like that's where that guy is. Like he's got a thing. It's a widget. It's a mousetrap. He's trying to do this. He's trying to get in front of the hype cycle and make a bunch of money because he's in Horizon 2. And then I look at some of the purpose driven stuff that I've sort of uncovered in the last 3 years. And I'm like, whoa, deep thinker, long term, love this stuff, but doesn't pay the bills. So I wanted to frame that a little bit for you, because it's something that you and I have worked on and worked through together over the last several years. And it's new to me. So it's helping me to frame sort of where people are when the conversation starts.
Yeah. Give me a lot of pause, honestly. I think it would be uncomfortable and strange if everybody was able to spend their time on that long horizon. I think that's meant for a smaller number of people in the world. And I was talking to my wife about like neurodivergence, and like I'm neurodivergent, she is too. We expect our daughter is too. And apparently it's actually even by design that that's a thing, that there are neurodivergent people in the world for a reason, because it actually complements the neurotypical people and provides a different frame of reference or a different perspective. And I think, if you take someone, for example, that's got ADHD, which is somewhat benign actually in terms of neurodivergence, the different types of it that can be out there, and the impacts that someone can feel as a result of that, trying to interact with society. I have that. And sometimes you can just feel shame, like, oh, why can't I just like beep boop, like make a list in the morning and just knock it off and
Why
get
can't I
my
be
shit.
normal?
Yeah, right. But that's like, if you can kind of recognize actually, well, I mean, for me, I'm not very good at that, but I can get on a call with somebody, I can make them feel comfortable in 2 seconds. I can run a panel discussion and make it really interesting, because I can respond to the stimulus in my environment like on a dime and move in a new direction the way maybe other people can't. Like, so yeah, to try to bring it back to your point around these 3 different horizons, I think it's kind of the same thing. Like it's good that some people have the ability mentally, or maybe also even like economically, because you kind of need economic means as well to be able to spend your time thinking more than necessarily having to do and be part of that second part, which is like we're trying to come up with ideas that match not the future state, but a little bit further ahead than the state that we're in right now, and extract economic output from that. And then I forget what your first one was. I don't
It's the
remember.
one that goes down. It's linear. So the
Yeah,
Horizon 1 is the sort of flattest plane, and it's where legacy systems are dying essentially.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
we're seeing so much of that, right? Like Kodak, like all those
yeah,
whatever examples that people give that like Blockbuster
yeah,
forget, right? Like
yeah.
that was on that horizon for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. The thing is, something I've been like, I mean, to bring it to this hybrid work thing for a second, like, it's like, we're sort of settled into this place where the majority of companies are defining themselves as some version of hybrid. And there's a really low level of fully in office people. And then there's also a low level of remote people. In the pandemic, it was much higher in favor of remote. And before COVID, it was more in favor of office. And now it's sort of like this whatever middle. But I don't really think that has anything to do with the future at all, actually. It's because it's like I think if you look at, like, to me, Horizon 3 that's happening like this is all a derivative of looking at how younger companies are behaving. And I made a post about it actually this morning, where, like, a typical perspective of like a traditional thinker who's mad that Horizon 1 is going like this would say in the work conversation, like, society and the economy is going to go to shit if everybody just doesn't get back 5 days a week. Like, that's as far as their thinking goes. But the problem is they're not actually looking at Horizon 3. And Horizon 3 is, I almost just want to, like, pull it up quickly. I hope this doesn't distract from.
No, go ahead. Look
like,
up
just to cite the data, like, to cite some data. Right now, 56% of employers let their employees decide where they work. 23% of them are fully remote. So I guess there's theoretically not a choice there because they don't have an office or something.
Right.
And then 18% of them, this is within tech. I should clarify. This is within the tech sector.
Okay.
And I look at tech sector as being the kind of bellwether of what becomes more typical or average over time.
We're all in the tech sector, like, to me.
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
what we're
whatever.
doing
Like,
right now is technology.
Yeah, for sure. So, but, like, like, if we just, like, say the knowledge economy, I looked it up. Like, in the US, it's defined, at least outwardly, as like roughly 30% of the knowledge economy is defined as the tech sector, right? Because I agree with you, everything's technology, but we might bucket it into like professional services or real estate or whatever. So if we're just talking like pure tech sector, something like 30% of the knowledge economy makes that up. And within that sector, right now, 56% of those employers are letting people decide where they work. 23% of them are fully remote. 18% of them are structured hybrid, meaning they have set days that they are telling people to come in. And 3% of them are fully in office. The thing that's changed most dramatically, though, since 2023, this is all according to Flex Index, is that there was a higher number of fully remote companies. And there's now like more companies are just basically saying choose. Like, so it was like 38% of people were let you choose, 37% were remote. This is in 2023. The bigger shift has gone into that choose where you work thing. And so,
man, I love Rob's work. It's so cool that he's put all this together for us. Like,
yeah, totally.
Remember, like, back in the day when we were starting with all this, it was like, why don't we have data on this? Finally, Rob's put it together. So shout out to Rob.
It's great. Shout out to him for sure. And then, so we're coming back to this, like, what's the longer term horizon? The thing from a physical real estate perspective that's happened within those technology submarkets in big cities in the world is that the office vacancy rate has skyrocketed in those submarkets because those companies are not renewing their leases faster, right? Like, they have shorter lease terms to begin with. And as they come up, they're downsizing them faster or getting rid of them faster. And then as the younger companies continue to grow and start from the beginning, as they grow, there's less reliance on office-centric ways of working. And so it's not to say, like, you pointed out a whole bunch of reasons why we should gather together at the top of this conversation. And those reasons are very relevant, and companies will come together. I actually believe, like, some people are really promoting like retreats and offsites. I think that's going to grow a lot. But I see from talking to large companies that they're looking at their offices as these cultural shrines, as these gathering places. And I think that's going to be a big change in the way that we use those pieces of real estate to kind of come together. But inherently, the younger companies are more and more distributed by default. And that's that long progressive thing that's just going to keep happening. And then last thing I'll say on is, like, Riverside is a really great technology that we're using right now. I feel like I can jump through the screen a little bit better. I feel like less latency. I can see your facial movements and expressions a little bit better than on other digital tools like Teams or Zoom. And as that continues to get better, I think that even, and Nick Bloom's talked about this too, like, remote work has gone up by about 5 or 6x since the pandemic. It's now kind of flattened out. He's like, but then it'll probably do that third curve again as technology continues to improve and improve and improve, because we'll be able to do more of what we can't through these screens, right?
Yeah,
So.
and you know, you make a great point there. So there's two things I want to talk about, because I want to shout out Kelly Cologne and her work in neurodiversity. She was at Purposeful Intent. That was the first time I met her IRL, and you
Same.
IRL, and Erica Wagner. And thanks, Simon, for putting that together. The neurodiversity side of things, like, they just see it different. And, you know, in order to have thought diversity, you need to have human diversity. And what we've created in a lot of ways is these echo chambers of agreement. Like, we have echo chambers in our teams. We have echo chambers in our organizations. We have echo chambers right now in the feed on LinkedIn. Like you and I, I shared that I unfollowed you because you had such a massive impact on my feed. And it wasn't personal, right? Like, we have to talk about this. It wasn't personal. I unfollowed you because my whole feed that I had worked for years on to keep diverse, like Web3, blockchain,
I know.
you know, agriculture. Like, I'm working so hard to, like, keep my feed wide, and all of a sudden it's everybody talking about RTO.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's a workplace strategist, everyone's a futurist. And then I, like, started realizing, holy crap, it's because, like, Dave does such an awesome job bringing people together. But that was the topic, right? So I unfollowed you. Don't take it personal. I was messing with the algorithm, and it worked. And then I also realized that I had too many bells. So I went and unchecked a lot of the bells. So anyway, the neurodiversity part, and then the echo chamber part. That's kind of what I wanted to come out of that.
Yeah. Well, like, to just go on the second one for a second, being a content creator has actually been a really humbling thing for me, because it's like, if I really get down to why do I do it, I get down to it for two reasons. One is creative expression, just continuing to see how my ideas land in the world and morph them and change them as I get responses. The other is I'm also in that second thing. What they're called?
Second horizon.
I'm on second horizon, you know, like,
you're in the
I
boat.
have a family.
Yeah.
I have a job.
Yeah.
And I work for a company that does X.
Yeah.
And I have to find a way to connect in what we do with what I care about. And I think I'm doing a decent job of doing that. But if I was on Horizon 3, spending more of my time thinking than doing, I would naturally be talking about different things than I am right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important to recognize. And that's where it's like, we have to know what platform we're on too, right? And this is, I think, part of what makes people mad about LinkedIn is it's a response to what people value about being on there. Like, LinkedIn may have the biggest say in that because it's their algorithm. But if we just take that to the side, people are deciding what it is. And it's natural that as it evolves, some people won't like it as much and other people will like it more.
Right.
And I give this example. This is where you have to have self-awareness. You have to think about what matters to you. So I used to love this recording artist. They were an electronic music group called Above and Beyond. And as they became more popular, their music became more mainstream. And it's at first made me really angry because I felt like I had been part of this, what they called the group, like group therapy and the Anjuna family. And I felt like this was a family now that I didn't want to be part of anymore, but I wasn't ready to release it. Right.
Yeah.
But then eventually I sort of said to myself, I'm like, well, I can sit here like a fucking curmudgeon getting mad about the fact that they don't produce the music anymore that I liked. Or I can just say, good for them. They're moving in this direction. It's no longer serving me. I'm not going to listen to that music anymore.
Right.
And I might still listen to the music from before as and when I feel like I want to.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the big thing, that it's like we have to just look in the mirror and go, do I want to be on this thing? Right. And I have two more things I want to say on this. It's like, this guy got mad at me the other day for making a personal post on LinkedIn. And he said he didn't think that this was the platform for it. He at least had the self-awareness to say, this might make me sound like a total boomer, but I don't. And this guy was like in his 30s, I think. He's like, I don't think that you should be doing this. And I said to him back, I'm like, it's fair completely that you have that point of view. Like, I respect that that is your point of view. But here you are engaging in the comments section of that post. Like, have you asked yourself why? Like, because based on your argument, you should have unfollowed me a long time ago.
Right.
Right.
Sure.
So it's like we just have to decide rather than getting mad about shit all the time. And so for me, I've actually gone ahead and blocked certain people on LinkedIn. And it's very rare. It's extremely rare. Like, it's less than 1% of the time. But I'm doing it sometimes for two reasons. One is people can be very mean and curmudgeon-y and just useless to the conversation. The other can actually be fatigue. So, like, if I'm super duper fatigued by what someone's saying, I might actually block them. But the majority of the time, I'll unfollow them. And I have learned, like, if you had have unfollowed me, Chris, like a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have been all fucking turned around about it. But now I'm just like, whatever. Like, I'm in this second horizon mostly. I'm trying to figure out a way to be authentic in it. And I genuinely actually crave being in Horizon 3. And I'm hoping that being able to monetize Horizon 2 can get me back to Horizon 3 at some point in the not too distant future, when I can spend more time walking in the woods thinking about shit.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm here to tell you, Dave, that you're already in Horizon 3 and that you can be in both Horizons at the same time. You just, so like, I let Horizon 1 go. Like, I use it personally just to recognize for awareness and consciousness, right? Like, instead of saying, okay, boomer, you know, position of privilege, 65-year-old white guy, I just go Horizon 1. Like, it's just easier for me to bucket that and for it to be less like charged and emotional.
Yeah.
And for me, it works, you know, and where I live is somewhere between 2 and 3. I focus every day. My morning is definitely Horizon 3. I spend a real good amount of intentional time thinking about 3, but then I have bills to pay. I got 2 kids in school. They're getting ready to go to college. Like, I got crazy bills. So you have to make money. That's not going to not happen. But the idea of being able to sort of know where you are in orientation to what you're trying to do is important. And you and I explored this in Verbella with our whole inspired people, inspired places thing, because you and I were also charged with the fact that people were not earning a commute. So what did we do? We got pissed and we were like, let's find the hardest fucking thing to ask people to do, and let's see if they do it. And we had some significant success with that, right? We went to the metaverse and we had meaningful conversations with sometimes 50, 75, 100 people that were like commuting into this fucking balloony world, which some people couldn't get past. They had to just keep talking about how it was balloony and no one had legs or whatever. They couldn't get past that.
One of those people's names was Anthony Slumbers.
Well, yeah, one of those names was, yeah, absolutely. And it was,
Guys are curmudgeon.
Over
I'm
and
saying
over,
it here.
over and over again, it was, I can't get past the fact that, you know, we're going to be cartoon characters without legs. And, you know, my thesis had nothing to do with the technology. My thesis was, this is a people problem, not a place problem. We got work issues. It's how we work, not where we work. So let's come up with a crazy idea, go into a computer video game, and have the most meaningful conversations we can as cartoons, and see if that actually starts to get to, you know, pick.
It
you
was
know,
the
pick
most fun I've had in years, honestly, doing it. And then the other thing that was incredible about it, and I saw this actually play out in poker, which was at first when internet poker became mainstream, internet players didn't know how to play live poker. When they went into the World Series of Poker or whatever, they were fish out of water. And the live pros were laughing at them, going like, internet poker's stupid. just like the internet itself, they thought it was a passing fad. Like you could see newspaper clippings from the 90s being like, the internet will pass.
I know. I lived it.
So they thought that internet poker would just be a passing thing. But what eventually happened is these guys cut their teeth on the internet so significantly that they became so proficient at the game that their technical abilities were, the base that they had there was so strong that they then started to pick up all the live stuff. And then they ended up absolutely obliterating and crushing the traditional live pros. They put them in the coffin. And then what ended up happening is it became this like remote first hybrid thing where like predominantly people played poker online because that was the place to sort of like mitigate risk. And it was the easiest, most frictionless place to play poker from anywhere around the world. You just pull up your laptop and have access to a million games at your fingertips, right?
Yeah.
But then they played hybrid. Like they went and played live poker and became very good at it. And it was like this omni player that became the best player. And that's where the industry is today, right? And then I was one of those people. I didn't become one of the best players in the world, but I rode that wave. And then what I found with what we did is that it gave me the ability to remove the friction of being a moderator. I got to have access to like whatever 30 conversations or whatever we did, where I got to create the script, drive the conversation, and learn how to do it. And then I went and did my first ever live moderated panel in Austin 2 weeks ago, and I fucking nailed it. And the reason I nailed it is because I had the foundational understanding of how to drive a conversation. Yeah. If I had tried to do that in person, how many people have actually moderated 30 conversations in person? Very few people on the earth, because it's actually hard to get yourself in front of 30 conversations in person.
Exactly.
Right? Whereas we did it in less than a year. Mm-hmm. So like, yeah.
It goes back to Austin with Minecraft, and it goes back to productivity and output. Like, you get better because you get reps.
Mm-hmm.
And work does the same thing. Like, if you're sitting in office 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and you're two humans and you're tasked with thinking about and doing the work, mm-hmm. somebody is doing 10 times the output while you're talking. Somebody is. And maybe only 50% of it is good. So what? That 50% of it that's good got done while you were talking about how to do the work. Mm-hmm. And it's like, the efficiencies and the effectiveness and the reps, that's what simulations allow us to do. So that when we are together and we need to nail it, we nail it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't think people have a lot of unstructured conversations inside or beyond the companies that they work for. And I think that's missing. I think it's natural that younger people might be less inclined to wanting to do it or doing it in the way that we've always done it, because they're used to like a very, very modern version of digital communication, which seems to happen in a way that I'm 37 and I don't fully understand it. I don't do it that way. But they default like less to a phone call or whatever. I think it's like, to me at 37, I say a few things in my head. I go, one, I watch the conservatism creeping into my brain. And I go, oh my God, I might become one of these curmudgeons one day if I don't like check myself. So I have to sort of say, okay, well, why do they do it that way? Let me be more curious about why they choose to interact in a way that people complain about, like, oh, they don't pick up the phone or whatever, right? But I think the other side of it is like, well, model behavior maybe that might be beneficial for people to sort of do, right? So it's like, instead of like making a 30-minute meeting, just call somebody. If you're a Slack user, huddle them, push the huddle button. Hopefully they pick up. If they don't, I bet you by the 5th time you try it, they will.
Yeah.
If they tell you straight up that they don't like communicating by voice and they'd rather do it differently, well then like pay them that respect and communicate with them the way that they want to be communicated with. But if there's a middle ground where that person might be able to see that an unstructured chat might benefit them as much as it would benefit you, well then just like model that behavior for them.
Yeah. And
right?
two people come to mind when you say that, right? So Darren Murph's Workplace OS, right? Like looking at how people work. He had a README when he was doing all of his work at GitLab, and that's when I got introduced to his work and
Mm-hmm.
introduced to him, and subsequently found his README. And when I read his README, he he very clearly defines his work style, his personality, how he is best to get in touch with, how he is most likely to respond. And that was the first time that I had ever seen a social README. Like a README usually in a Git repository is like what the technology is about. This was a README on Darren Murph. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, dude, that's brilliant, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I took that, and obviously through the years of evolution, meeting different people, I started listening to Brian Elliott, who you just worked with and just talked
Yeah, I
to,
love Brian.
and
Love
Brian's
Brian.
team agreements. Like this stuff is not that hard, and it's extremely complicated, but it's not that hard socially. Like teams need to agree how they're going to work together, and in order to agree to that, we have to share our work styles and our humanness. And those two things together, what Darren's working on and what Brian is working on, a team agreement with results and outcomes as part of it, and Darren's personal side of how we work best together, that
Mm-hmm.
matches tools that we all have out here, like Rome, right? John Broad
Yeah.
and Howie Lerman, like their product, like those tools exist now. So anyway, I had to riff on that a little bit because that's future and your future. So let's go there a
Mm-hmm.
little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. When I think of Rome, when I went into Rome, I loved it. I thought it was great. Um, but I immediately saw that this is like the one of the examples of a next frontier. Um, I I've seen that they are growing and having great outcomes, but I can't see like Fortune 100 or even Fortune 1000 companies shifting from Slack and Teams over to Rome
Mhm,
anytime soon.
mhm.
Um, and in a way, it's like sad because it's just like I think that's a better, more collaborative and bursty way of working. Um, but I think that yeah, like those types of entrepreneurs, and I don't know a lot about them, but I think that Howard, if I'm correct, has already like scaled the company and had a nice exit and it's probably doing
Yeah,
okay.
Yext in New
Is
York.
is
He awesome
yeah.
exit.
So he's maybe financially independent.
Hmm.
Would that be accurate or
Yep.
loosely accurate? Well, that's
Yep.
amazing, right? Because that's the kind of founder, if that's where he's at, that can make the investment into the next frontier
Yep.
and build it for the world and have it ready for them when they're ready for it.
Well, it's exactly what Yext did. So when you look at, great outcomes, they start with small beginnings,
Yeah.
and I just full disclosure, I use Rome
Mm-hmm.
right now for my lobby. So anytime anyone wants to meet with me instead of Calendly or
Mm-hmm.
Teams or bookings, I use Rome. Um, and because I want to introduce people to a different platform, and when they come in, they have a different experience.
Can you
It's
record it in there? Can you do like could I record out to like Gong if it was like or to like could I get a transcript of the
Yes,
conversations that I had?
yes, yes. They it's awesome. It's what they're doing is pretty amazing. I'll just leave it at that
No, I
without
love
turning
it.
it
Yeah.
into a commercial. And they
Yeah.
have 10,000 global users right now. So they're an army, right? Like you've seen my posts on LinkedIn about the army of tiny giants. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what changes the world is tiny shifts, one positive little tiny shift every day over time.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you get to this big thing at the end. And Facebook
Mm-hmm.
started with no users, like
Yeah.
Instagram, TikTok, all of it, LinkedIn, all started with no users. Those are platforms, right? And what ends up happening is that little tiny input over time takes over. So I wouldn't say that they won't necessarily work their way into those fortune companies. I think that what'll happen is they'll creep into the team agreements that have autonomy. They're certainly already
Mm,
working with SMBs. The SMBs that I advise
I think
are
you're right. That's a really good point
they'll
actually, because
grow into
we
it.
we even see it actually at Cadence where like someone's looking for people in space coordination tool within a specific team in a company,
Mm-hmm.
and that independent team within that company or group buys it away from the larger organization. So yeah, I think it's a very, very good point that you're making there.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing, and that's where, again, getting to Darren's work and many other people's work, by the way. But the README and sharing the best way to communicate. There was one email that I got this week. I can't remember exactly who it was from, but it said, I respond to phone calls in an hour, text messages in a day, and emails in a week. Please choose your method of communication that most fits your need.
Mm,
And just
yeah,
that simple bottom was like, he said, call me. Like, I'm so much more effective. I will answer the phone. It'll be a 2-minute conversation. If it needs to be 2 minutes, it'll be done. It doesn't need to be an email that lasts for 3 months that has 10 people copied on it. Right. I
yeah,
loved it. So
yeah.
I just think that
That was
style, matching
Darren's.
that
That
style.
was Darren's
No,
one.
it was
Oh,
a friend who's in regenerative agriculture, like a big thinker.
yeah,
And he was literally like, the best way to interrupt me is just to call me. Like,
yeah.
just, right?
Well, if you think about it, right? Like if like a family member that I care about calls me, it doesn't really matter mostly what I'm doing. I'm gonna pick it up. Um, and I mean, I think if you are working with people where the outcome of what you're working on is important, you'll pick up when they call.
Urgency it's
Yeah,
like every startup has urgency. Like, there's nothing more frustrating than working on something right in the middle of something, and then a team member that has the answer, and you can't figure something out because you've done your part, and you're dependent upon their feedback, and you can't reach them. That's corporate America.
yeah,
Right? That's why it's so hard to innovate, because people are too important to respond, or they're too busy, or they're on vacation, or they have PTO, or whatever. There's a million reasons. And the startup world just doesn't have that. It's like, dude, I'm on all the time, 24/7, 365. You have a question, call me. I don't care what time.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
building something of purpose. Call me.
yeah, yeah, for sure,
That long
for sure.
horizon. Well,
Yeah.
what have we missed, Dave? So I know one thing that we've missed. Um, One of the questions that I like to ask everybody that comes on here is, and I think I know the answer, but do you consider yourself a maestro, a maverick, or a misfit?
I guess I don't definitively know what the definitions of each of those terms are, but if I was to jump to one, it would be misfit. Um, I've never really fit in properly. Um, and that's why I love the internet, to be honest, because I've been able to connect with other misfits or groundhogs or nerds more easily across they pop up, rather than having to be dependent on like who's at your school or like who's in your office. Like you
Right?
can just find the people that you feel a misfit connection to. Um, but yeah, the other thing is like in traditional environments, I also never really got any recognition either. Not that it's all about recognition, but like I never ever won an award at school ever. Like never, ever, 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 ever did I even breathe on any form of acknowledgement from a traditional institution. But because of the internet, I've been able to get recognized or be part of a lot of different things that I wouldn't have been able to, because the way I expressed myself in those traditional environments was looked down on,
Yeah.
either by teachers or by my dad or whomever. But by being able to just put myself out, I was able to just like find the people that would see a place for a misfit in their world, right? And I mean, the company I'm working for now is great. Like our CEO, Dan Bladen, like he's just a guy who's really good at putting the right people on the bus without really knowing where they might fit in. And if I hadn't put myself out online, we would have never collided in any way. So like that's sort of an example of it to me, I think. I don't know. Were you
Yeah.
going to guess that one, or were you going to call me something different?
Well, no, I was definitely gonna, misfit. But you have touches of all three, because I've
Mm.
seen brilliance in your work, and I think I've seen you be a maverick too, because maverick takes balls, and a misfit. I mean, a maestro needs brains. And I think that you embody all of that. But you touched on something we didn't talk about. Do you remember when we were talking with Evan at University of Maine, what he said after you interviewed him? Do you remember, like, I think maybe you asked him how he felt or something?
Like how'd you feel after that conversation?
Yeah. Do you remember what he said? Because I do.
I don't actually.
He said, I feel heard.
Yeah.
He,
It came through me in my body when you said that. Yeah.
so what you just said about recognition is also missing in the workplace. And that's what Web3 is doing such a great job with on blockchain is, reward being tied to recognition, being tied to compensation.
Mm-hmm.
And, we all want to be heard. Like, it's like, without getting super soft, we all like a hug too, like nature and nurture and feedback and
Mm-hmm.
positivity are what make the world positive energy, sunlight, wind, air. They make the world possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of our linear legacy systems just tell you to fucking suck it up and shut up and get a paycheck. Like, if that's not reward enough for you, then here's more. And it's like more for the sake of more in terms of compensation. That's not necessarily the most efficient use of high value energy. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
a pat on the back goes farther than an extra $500. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, man, are we just so fucked up with some
Mm-hmm.
of our systems where it's tied to, well, now I get to take my wife out to dinner or whatever. No, like, okay, cool. But like, that's ephemeral too. Like the circular systems and the regenerative systems where my brain has been for the last couple of years, look at value and benefit and return that to the host in exchange for additional work or better energy, right? So it sounds like what Dan's doing is exploring more than road mapping. He's putting the right people on the bus. It's headed in a direction, but at the end of the day, the experiment as an explorer is, I don't know what's on the other side of the fucking river, but I know I got a team that's going to handle it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think there's this, again, it's like to maybe just close it out. It's just as an entrepreneur, especially, you're trying to juxtapose what can the market buy from me today? And what do I want to build for tomorrow? And the two are not directly the same thing.
Mm-mm.
Like, and Dan actually always uses this analogy about Netflix, right? It's like they had to first mail DVDs before they became the Netflix that we have today. They couldn't have just gone down the road of Netflix today first. The company would have failed, because the market was not ready for streaming, right?
Yeah.
But that's where they moved into. And so, like in our world, people get all bent out of shape about the idea of like reserving any form of space in an office, and that like we should just be excited about, AI being able to tell us like, hey, like I've soft reserved this seat for you because I know you've got like a 10% chance of showing up, and like here's who's here, and who's there, like this blissful state where we just wake up and like a fucking AI tells us where to be. And it's like, okay, great, that would be really cool.
It's a
But like
simulation.
also we have to like mail some DVDs in the hybrid working world first to get to that point if we're ever going to get there.
Yeah.
Because a company needs to sustain itself along that journey to then pivot, with the right team on the bus to make that thing happen. And that's
Dude,
actually what Dan has taught me. That's what working in a startup has taught me.
and it's awesome that you've made that shift because you were in such a linear industry, right? As an office broker working for one of the world's largest companies,
Dude,
you had a very clear path. Like it was, you do here to here. That's your swim lane. And when
I
now,
to interrupt you, I know I'm so happy to have left brokerage because one of my best friends in brokerage texted me last night at 10:50 p.m. and said I might go stand in front of traffic. So,
well, absolutely, like, listen, I was in the supportive role of that same industry. That's how you and I met. And listen, I did stand in traffic. Like 2021 happened and I was listening to the world. It was on fire. And I was like, I cannot believe I found myself somehow in this office market. I've got to find a way out.
yeah,
But
yeah.
emergence, that's like, you did such a great job there. Like, My job is to bring natural systems and regenerative systems to place. You're talking in a perfect form about emergence. And that's that a healthy startup is not just focused on total addressable market, ICP, and product market fit. It is all about emergence. You don't necessarily know how you're going to bloom. You just have to make sure that you're putting in all the efficient inputs and paying just enough attention to that process so that it does emerge at the right time.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's probably a good place to close her down.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, listen,
Yeah.
Dave, this was awesome. We're dead on an hour. So that
Nice.
was
Oh,
perfect
nice.
timing. We could talk for days, and we will do it again for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Super stoked for you, dude. You made a move from big city life to small town life, Nowheresville. You're not doing anything but self-aggrandizing. Clearly, you haven't shifted from one industry to another successfully. You're not self-aware, and you're not taking any time to look at the third horizon. So, I think maybe at the end of the day, I would just tell you that you should probably just get back in your swim lane and shut up.
Oh man, that's great. Okay. We'll put it on LinkedIn so that maybe all these people who think that can just shut up and go find a new platform.
I will definitely put this on LinkedIn, and we'll have fun with it. Thank you again, man. I'm
Yeah,
glad
thank
to
you.
hear that Amanda and Elle are doing great, and I'm glad to hear that
Mm.
you guys are loving walking around downtown. Keep posting.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
All right,
Appreciate
brother,
it.
man.
Mm-hmm.